Hi, I'm George. Welcome to my YouTube channel and welcome to my art studio. Today I'm going to share with you one of the most important concepts that I learned when I was an art student studying at a classical atelier. And it's a really simple concept that when I learnt it, it really helped me with my drawing and my painting, and it actually changed the way that I viewed the objects that I was painting. So hopefully it will be as helpful to you as it has been to me. And what I'm talking about is known as the classical order of light. And that may sound a little bit complicated, but it's actually quite simple. And just by understanding this, it will help you make your drawings, your paintings look more three-dimensional and realistic. And it will also help you find the proportions in the drawing more accurately. I think the best way for me to explain this is for me to draw it and to show you some examples of exactly how this will help you when you draw or paint. So the simplest way for me to explain this concept is I'm going to start by drawing a circle. Okay, now this circle is going to be a sphere, and we can imagine a light lighting it. So whatever you're painting, there's always going to be a dominant light source. So if you're painting outdoors, that's going to be the sunlight. Even on a cloudy day, it's either going to be the sun going through the clouds or just the clouds, that sky is going to create a soft diffuse light from above, which is going to light everything underneath it. Or if you're in a studio, perhaps you've set up a light on the model. So let's say we have a light source over here and it's lighting from above and maybe slightly from the front. So I'm just going to shade that in. So we've got a section in light and a section in shadow. What also is going to happen is that the sphere is going to block some of the light from reaching the ground. So on the same side as the section in shadow, you're going to get a cast shadow. So even though painting is very much a visual language, I find it really does help to start naming certain shadows, certain things you see, having a vocabulary so that you can describe perhaps problems that you encounter or things you see which are going on. And we can be more specific with this as well. This shadow here is a form shadow because it's a shadow on the form, and the reason it's in shadow is because it's turning away from the light. On the edge of the shadow, you're going to get a halftone. So I'm going to shade in this shadow a bit darker, just to give you a bit more of a value range to work with. And then you're going to get a halftone here. And actually the halftone is going to slowly graduate and get lighter as it gets closer to the light. Halftone. And so in general, the form shadow is going to be softer. Depending on the object, the surface of the object, it's going to have a softer edge. And the cast shadow is going to be sharper. And it's actually going to be sharpest here, just underneath the object. And as it gets further away, it's going to get a bit softer. And also if you have an object which is, say, casting a shadow onto something which is further away, again, it's going to be softer. The closer that cast shadow is to the object, the sharper it's going to be. And now what you're also going to get is you're going to get a highlight, a specular highlight, which is going to reflect the light source. Now you've got to remember that the light is coming in from this direction, so the highlight's going to be somewhere about here. And this area here is also turning away, so you get the highlight there. Highlight is never going to be on the very edge of the form. And within the shadows, you're also going to get the darkest shadow, which is going to be an occlusion shadow. And occlusion shadows are found in areas like cracks and crevices where there's no light reaching them. And what you will actually find is that even the shadow on this side is going to receive some light, and so is this shadow as well. And what it's going to be receiving is reflected light from light which is bouncing off areas on this side of the object. That is often why when you look at a landscape or a scene outside and you perhaps see a building, a white building, and it has a sort of golden glow from the sun on it, but then the shadows are going to be really blue. The reason why the shadows are blue is that there's blue light from the sky which is getting reflected into those shadows. And what you're going to get here is you're going to get a little bit of reflected light coming into the shadow, and the darkest part of the shadow is going to be here, which we call the core shadow. So let's just call that core shadow. So that's going to be the darkest bit of the shadow. And likewise with the cast shadow, whatever is above the object will also cast some light into the cast shadow, which is the reason why the occlusion shadow is the darkest. And just from this quick sketch, you can see that that sphere is now starting to look a bit 3D. And it is good to remember these names, the light, the highlight or specular highlight, the halftone, you know, the form shadow, the occlusion shadow, the cast shadow. If you can identify these, you can also identify the nature of the edges, and it can help you with your painting. Also, if you are going to try and paint or draw from imagination, having a good understanding of this classical order of light will help you make the scene look more realistic. So just a few examples of how this actually works in nature. If we have a portrait here, so we've got someone's head, let's say, here, and the light again is coming in from the front and the top right. So we're going to have, I'm just going to draw a quick center line, brow line, eyes, nose, mouth here. As we draw the person here, things which are facing down, away from the light, are going to be in shadow, which is why the top lip tends to look darkest and you get a bit of shadow under the bottom lip. And also this side of the face here is going to be in shadow because it's facing away from the light. And the highlight is going to be around here on the side of the light. Sometimes, depending on the person's hair, you'll get another dark value in the hair. The lightest part of the hair is going to be capturing light, and the hair is going to get darker as it turns away from the light. Here, under the head, you're going to get a cast shadow, which is getting cast by this head. It's going to be sharpest directly under the jaw, and it's going to get a little bit softer as it goes away, and probably will cast a shadow over the shoulder as well. So that's a very simple example of the classical order of light working in nature on a portrait. So I'm going to show you a few more examples of how this is happening on some more finished artworks. So for example, this here is one of the cast drawings that I did whilst I was a student at the London Atelier of Representational Art, which was a classical art school basically teaching 19th century academic drawing and painting. And we had to draw this series of cast drawings before we could even start painting with colour. So this is a charcoal and chalk drawing. The light was from kind of the front and the top left. So for that reason, you get the shadow getting cast on the right hand side. And the reason why academic art schools make you draw plaster casts is because as they're white, the classical order of light is really evident because you have quite a strong light and you have a white object, so there's no local colour on the object which is going to compete with the values of the shadows. And what you do when you draw these casts is you surround them with like black drapery, so they're kind of in a shadow box. That way there's not a lot of light getting reflected into the shadows. If you were to use white drapery, white reflects a lot of light, so these shadows would have a lot more reflected light and this clear shadow pattern wouldn't be as evident, although it would still be there, just to a lesser extent. So here you can see the light coming in, you get these form shadows here, you get a bit of reflected light coming in to the shadows, you get occlusion shadows sort of in the nostril, in the mouth, those areas which are really receiving hardly any reflected light at all. Another example of the classical order of light taking place, you can see that the sunlight is coming in from the left hand side and the shadows are getting cast on the right hand side by the objects. And it's good to be conscious of where the light source is, which is lighting your scene, because obviously that would dictate the shadows. And in a landscape painting like this, which was painted on plein air, the sun will move throughout the sky. If you keep trying to chase the sunlight, then your shadows are going to be all over the place. This started quite high in the sky, and then as it got lower, the shadows got longer and they moved a bit. Because I'm aware of how light interacts with objects in the scene, even when the sun has moved and changed position, I know where to place the shadows. I know how to deal with the contours between the light and the shadow, and it's just something which is really useful to keep in mind. So I hope you found that video useful, and that the classical order of light is going to be something which you're now conscious of and you can see happening when you observe nature. And also, if you're going to paint a portrait and if you have the ability to control the setup, I find it really does help to have one dominant light source, whether that's light from a window, a skylight, or artificial light. So you can have that light source and you can clearly see the light shapes, the shadow shapes, the halftone, the cast shadow, and that will actually make painting and drawing a lot easier, and it will also make your composition a lot clearer for the viewer to read when they see your painting. So hopefully that was useful, and if it was, please do give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and if you have any questions, do comment in the comment section below. I'm happy to help, and I'll see you in the next video.